Hey everybody, and welcome to the Fart Fetish Podcast once again. We have another great episode with a guest today, so let me get the intros out of the way so we can jump into it. The Fart Fetish Podcast is available on almost all major podcast platforms and releases episodes monthly, usually the first Friday of the month. You can also visit fartfetish.info where you can find the podcast and some informative resources linked there. There's also a link to request an invite to the Discord server on the fartfetish.info website. Come join and talk about the fart fetish with us there. Also, I've been posting polls on my Twitter at Closet Fetishist, so join the conversation. And of course, if you want to be on the show, you can always reach out to me. My email is eproctophilia@gmail.com, and for ease, it's linked on the fartfetish.info site as well. And that's it. I'd now like to introduce Naomi, who is a cross-dresser and fart fetishist who is here today to share their perspective on the taboo aspects, as well as their experience and evolution within this fetish to where they are today. Join us now for the conversation on the Fart Fetish Podcast. Thank you very much for being here, Naomi. Why don't you start with a little bit about yourself and what the fart fetish looks like for you? Like, how do you enjoy it?
Thank you for having me. This is my first ever guest on a podcast, so it's a big moment for me.
Welcome.
Thank you. So yes, I'm a crossdresser, and I live with my girlfriend. First of all, maybe I'll have to explain that English is only my third language. So to the listeners out there, I'm sorry if I'm a bit incoherent at times.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. I mean, impressive. Congratulations for learning 3 languages. I unfortunately only have the one. So good on you for taking that initiative.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was great about yourself. Tell us a little bit about the how the fart fetish works and whether it works in within those elements you've talked about, or if it's just completely separate.
Well, my crossdresser aspect has actually developed into me kind of living out the slutty woman fantasy that I'd like to that I would be turned on myself experiencing in real life. So it's kind of a role play where I introduce the aspects that I myself would like to see in women, which can sound very stereotypical, and maybe not all women would be so proud of my view of the. But as I said, it's a role play which goes into the slutty aspects of womanhood. I don't really intermix my cross-dressing with the fart fetish. I kind of keep that separate. But I think the feminization and the how do you explain it, like the extreme version of womanhood with the high heels and the makeup and so on is very much connected to my fart fetish.
Absolutely. For me, when you described it to me, it sounded like a bit like the aspect of taboo, but interestingly, I think it may be part of that. But I actually did a poll on Twitter to see. I asking people if people who enjoyed the taboo element, does hyper-feminization of the woman, like makeup, lashes, high heels, perfume, basically the items you listed, does that make the taboo enjoyment better, worse, or the same for you? And we only got 18 responses at the poll, but there's still 4 days to go on that poll, but 50% actually said more feminized is better. So it was an interesting aspect for me to learn that the hyper-feminization of the woman is actually desirable by a lot of people who do enjoy the taboo element. 16% said feminized is worse, but 33% said there was no difference. So they could have maybe more like an everyday looking woman, maybe no makeup, whatever that means to you, versus the hyper-feminized, maybe going out, night on the town woman, which is, dressed up and dressed quite, sharply, I guess.
Exactly. That's exactly my thoughts. And I can very much get into the mindset that hyper-feminization is a big part of it, because it kind of makes that interplay between the taboo aspect and the womanhood become even more nuanced and even more, playing against each other, building up the taboo part of it. One thing I was thinking was it even goes into like Hollywood aspects of how we stereotype the beautifying of women. For example, in the 90s, it was shows like Friends or something like that, and today maybe it's shows like Big Bang Theory, which you have these three women, right? And one of them, I forget her name, but one of them is like the pretty one. I would be surprised if people with fart fetish would probably want to see her fart before they see the two others. If you get my drift.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's interesting because I wouldn't consider her character. If I think we're talking about the same person, I wouldn't consider her character to be like hyper feminized. Like she is obviously a feminine woman. She's the most feminized, I guess, on that show. But she's definitely not like.
I think we all also have like this different kind of understandings and standards that we put upon hyper-feminization.
Maybe it's a difference of times changing. You know, the Marilyn Monroe, that aspect of femininity has kind of fallen out of favor unless you're a high fashion model. More on, especially on TV and media, the women are still very feminized, but just in a more modern, like, I'm going to wear a sweatshirt or whatever type way. They're not like needing to wear dresses or specific makeup or anything, or like very overt makeup anyways. Like they wear more natural stuff.
I can definitely follow your thinking. My mind goes to like if we start with the 60s woman, the hippie-ish woman, then you could be kind of hyper feminized, or not, maybe that's not maybe the right word, but you could definitely have that female beauty aspect to you while still having have armpit hair and not remove your hair on the genitals and so on. And when we get to the 70s, maybe it's more like this Pulp Fiction kind of ladies, with the high heels and also often the leather aspect to it. So I think maybe we're kind of living in these modern times where we kind of mix all those times together, and it's very hard to maybe pinpoint what exactly is the stereotypical hyper feminized woman, which makes it that more interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think there's similar to the way music, kind of like everyone listened to what was on the radio back in the day. Now with streaming, everybody listens to whatever they want. So you have some people really into punk and some people really into like new disco or, whatever's going around. I think the same way in expressing your womanhood. Some women are, dressing more feminine, and some are maybe wearing, big black boots, and maybe it's a dress, but it's a black leather dress or black latex dress. And it's very different times, very different kinds of ways to express femininity, rather than like the 50s where everyone kind of had the stay-at-home mother look to their womanhood. Even if it was women were starting to go in the workplace, it was all very conservative.
Most definitely, and I think that's one aspect that's really fun to play around with when I role play in my cross dressing outfits. It's like you can look really slutty even though you're wearing very innocent looking outfits, and then you can go all the way like a street hooker, right?
Sure. When I want to, well, let me ask you first, like you mentioned the fart fetish and the taboo. How do you like, more specifically, how do you enjoy that? Would you like see it in a girlfriend experience type way? Like, I'm with this highly feminized woman and she's just farting, in my presence in the same room or whatever. We're having a fun time. Do you see it as a more dominating experience? How does that work for you?
I think it's pretty. Some days it's more of a girlfriend type of setup, but as for example, one of the earliest memories I have with parts from women or females, I should say, was when I was very young, and this girl, which was like the hot girl in class, if you may say so, she was like taking a piss, like teasing me, and we were outside in a tent, like it was this summer's day, and she was like, "I think I have something on my pants where my ass is. Can you check for me?" And just that she did that, like she turned around and put her ass in my face, was like, "Oh my fucking god, this is amazing." And then she farted. So I think I got that excitement from like having a girl's ass in my face, and then the shock effect of her farting. Maybe, already uh, there was some mechanism that started my fetish journey, but I would say that the domination aspect is, I don't really fantasize that much about. I'd say that when it comes to porn, it's obviously easiest to find women you're attracted to, often in a domination setup. When it comes to real life experiences and fantasies, it's definitely more intimate than or domination. Some people say domination is the most intimate thing they can experience, but I have just never really learned the ropes of it. So for me, it's more not so dominated.
For sure, for sure. I've never heard that domination is the most intimate way you can get. I'd actually honestly argue in our exploration here, it seems like taboo is the aspect that reaches intimacy the most, just because you are learning more about that person than basically society is allowed to learn. With farts and poo and shit and peeing, is all that essentially just, it's left for the bathroom and for yourself. No one else is shared in that experience, for better or worse. But us in this fetish, we want at least one part of that, the farting aspect. For some of us elevate to scat as well. But the point is, I think that is a much intimate exploration, because I'd argue the domination, and I'm a domination fan, but I think the domination always has an aspect of role play or a pretense to it, in which it's not real. Because unless you are a dominating person, you're in a 24/7 master slave dynamic, you're gonna be acting more or less as a dominant. Because for most people, they're just, they do their dominant play, and then, let's go have breakfast somewhere. And you're not going to be doing a dominating play at a breakfast place. It's inappropriate, but it's also just probably not what either party wants to do. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to think about that more. But I do think intimacy definitely comes from. I can understand, even though I don't experience the taboo element myself, or I don't, feel that in my brain as something being the most exciting. I can understand where that feeling of intimacy come from. And you hear it also in the gay fart fetish community as well, talking about when they talk about the taboo element. I really think it ties right into that intimacy, whether it be, a friend or a significant other. You're really connecting with that person when you've revealed something like a fart, which is, personal. It's the most personal thing, one of the most personal things, I suppose, a person can have.
Totally. And I actually feel a lot like you do when it comes to domination, that for me it's very much about role playing. And but besides my cross dressing, I've never really been very good at role playing, or found it that exciting for me. But I did have a mistress once, that she was like on this what's the name in English? Like these websites where you're looking for sex partners, and she her name was basically seeking ass liquor. It was very in your face, and I thought, okay, that's me, because damn, that's exactly what the kind of woman I'm looking to play with. So I contacted her, and she wanted to play with a crossdresser like me. And when we met up, it was very much about me giving her rim jobs. But she really was into the domination aspect of it, which as time went by and we met a couple of times, the domination aspect for me was like something I put up with to get to the rim job part, you know. But she was the one who basically told me that domination is the most intimate aspect of sexuality, because it's about 100% reliance and trust, like for it to be totally real.
I got you. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting. I want to go back to the experience you had in the tent. Would that be was that the first time you started having fetish thoughts? Is that when it like started for you?
I mean, I was so young that my male hormones were obviously starting to take a hold of me, but not in a super sexual way. It was more like the Disney innocent way, where like you had feelings and stuff without it being sexualized. I think maybe it's interesting because before that, I would I would have this game with my friends and so on, where we would like show our assholes to each other. But I didn't. It was really exciting and fun, but I was too young to put a sexual understanding on it. And as I've gotten older, that fascination of the assholes has never gone away. It's only grown.
For sure. Yeah, you meant that brings us to something you mentioned to me, which is the evolution of this fetish for yourself. Can you describe that and how it got started?
Yeah. So I remember when I first started like Googling uh, porn, and you know it was like at my aunt's house, I think one of the first times, and I've often thought about it since then, like fuck, I didn't delete my internet history. But I remember very vividly that my search word was not so much pussy or something like it was always like asshole, ass. That's what I was mostly interested in, seeing women showing off their assholes. And when I had seen that often enough, I began to think that the darker the assholes were, the more attractive they looked. And I knew that it had something to do with that I saw them to be a bit dirty, like not super clean. And yeah, then it slowly like turned into like rim job videos, especially women on women. Tushy Liquors was a porn company that I was such a big fan of. And then all of a sudden, I found these, Brazilian fart movies and Kelsey Obsession. Kelsey Obsession was probably my first real fart experience, and I was blown away quite literally.
You know, it's interesting what I was thinking. You do present not only in the hyperfeminization aspect, but in the journey aspect. At least no one has talked about it thus far. Like most of the people, I'm thinking of Dill specifically, mentioned like kind of preferring clothed farts and really not wanting to see the asshole necessarily. And I'm more in that camp as well. But you're the first person I've talked to on the show, and first person I've read FetLife posts or whatever that has mentioned the asshole as a specific element, and it makes sense. I mean, that's where the farts come from. But like, it's funny how each of us kind of have a different approach to this in very specific ways. Like you started from a path to maybe, and this is me assuming on some level, but from assholes to, more, and then from there moving to farts. Whereas I think some of the other people, myself included, started with farts and then are maybe on a journey toward the asshole or a different type of journey at all, maybe toward scat. There's so many possibilities. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's what fascinates me also very much about your podcast, that fart fetish is so different for people. Like, that's what made me also like reach out to you, because I was like, damn, I thought everybody had it like me.
Absolutely. I had the same feeling. I think that's been one great thing is to and then the fact that people have wanted to come on the show and talk about it is we do get so much perspective rather than, me just saying like, oh, here's what I think about certain things or what listing. I'm very glad. I think by the third episode in, we were already having interviews. So there's definitely a hunger for people to learn about this. And I hope it, spreads out academically, whatever, whoever needs to be involved. But I think for now, it's great that we just have this community of people who want to come together and talk about their experience. I think that's where a great start for us.
Totally. And just to get back to your previous point there, about seeing the asshole, for me, if I can see the asshole while I see her face, like it becomes like her beauty mixed with the dirty side, then it's perfect for me.
That's very interesting. Now, I agree with you in that sense. At least in terms of seeing the ass and the woman's face, I find it a lot easier, like let's say making image captions. Seeing just an ass, you have no personality to base it off of. You have nothing to go on. You can maybe you could consider it a blank slate. So any fantasy or any role you want to play there works. But when you see the face, you can see like, oh, she's angry, or oh, she's being cutesy, or oh, she's something. And then you can put a story to that rather than, oh, here's an asshole. Like, what now? Like, what's gonna happen? Like with the face, you get the personality, and you're right, you get the beautification, the makeup, the whatever feminized aspect she has, you get to see as well. And I think that is an important point.
Totally. And also there's an aspect for me about the innocence. Sometimes I have experienced in my life that some girls have farted without it being intentional, and the kind of humiliation aspect that follows with that, or just being really embarrassed, which maybe also has which maybe also is an aspect of my fetish, because I remember having seen some porn where the woman maybe didn't wipe her ass super good before going on set. And to me, that was like a really big thrill to see like her imperfection and her being dirty without necessarily even knowing it.
For sure. For sure. Well, that kind of brings us to, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about the evolution, but you also talked about the progression for yourself, or you talked to me about it, from fart to including scat within that fetish. Can you talk more about this and like maybe when that change happened and why it started to come about?
For me, I basically became fart porn obsessed. I would watch it at least once a day, and sometimes I would just watch it for a couple of hours each day. Then it just progressed into being more and more and more. And I remember like reading about these Brazilian fart movies, and people were like complaining that those weren't real farts; they were pumped and stuff. But I just really found some of them quite attractive to ladies. So I kept watching those Brazilian fart porn movies, and then I found some movies where they were sharding. So like it was in a domination setup where Often it was like farting on another woman's face or something like that. And then the woman accidentally sharded. And it was like obviously accidentally because the production team like went in and like cleaned the woman's face and stuff. So that's kind of what led me to farts becoming more dirty, because I've suddenly it also just felt like there was an extra aspect of reality to it, especially when you saw it not being on purpose, if that makes sense. And now I'm in the development stages of my fetish where I'm beginning to be more and more interested in scat. And again, it's very much connected to like how attractive the woman is, versus being really dirty.
Sure, and it makes sense. It's like what if farts are already a high level of taboo, where do you go from there? Obviously, scat is one of the ways, and it makes total sense. I'm not necessarily a scat fan in terms of in real interactions. I don't foresee that, but in the fantasy and stories I've written, it almost made sense. Like if you're, especially in a dominating setting, as I've written, if you're fart torturing someone, where do you go to elevate it or end the story in like oh no, this is too much, or that kind of type of way. In the early days, like for some reason I had my fart stories ending in death, which is weird. Some people enjoyed that, some people did not. But essentially to say that the farts were so bad that people or oxygen lack passed away from them. In a way, I think scat took that place where it's just like what's more humiliating or whatever, degrading, I guess, than being shat on. And I think that's where that element came from in my stories. But I agree with what you're saying. It makes total sense. Is that so? You're saying watching fart porn and other aspects, and that aspect kind of like sneaking its way in, found you more interested in it?
Yeah. I think I mentioned to you that in our chats that definitely for me that when the fetish is confined to porn and not real life, there's nothing to like limit where it can go. It's kind of like it's in your mind's controls how you want to take this, and I think that like we work like we always want more. That's definitely how I worked when it came to porn. And when I've tried, for example, my girlfriend once shitting on me, and for me it was a really kinky experience, but it didn't make me like think, okay, this is gonna develop into face scat or something like that. But, I found out, okay, that's my limit. Like she shitting on my stomach, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I absolutely, I think it makes total sense. I mean, there's definitely people who enjoy that aspect, or people who enjoy smearing or any other types of. There's so many paths that people go down, and I think that's also part of why the show's important, is because people who don't know have an assumption that it's whatever the word, like if let's say they don't like fart fetish or don't like scat fetish, whatever the worst image of their mind is, that's what they're going to apply to us. So I think it's important to do this show and have other perspectives so people know it's like, oh, you can do fart fetish this way, you could do fart fetish this way, you can go to scat, you don't have to go to scat, you could be naked, you could be clothed. And it's really, and I'm not saying we're the only fetish that has these nuances, but the fact that we're getting our message out there, that the nuances exist, I think is important, especially in this time where kink is starting to become more public and more popular amongst people who weren't originally in the community, people are starting to explore. So having a good base for people to explore, having a nice tasting area where people are like, oh, this is what fart fetish is. It's not two girls, one cup, which is, I think, a lot of people's perspective. Like you say, fart fetish, I think that's where a lot of people's mind goes to. And that's, that's scat fetish for one. But I think people don't know where to draw the line. So having these discussions, I think, is very important.
Totally agree. Maybe someday we'll get there when women can kind of maybe appreciate even guys having a fart fetish, because it must be kind of exhausting to spend your life with someone and not be able to just be your own dirty self 24/7.
Sure, and even to say dirty, I think is maybe too broad. Like, I think the fact that people do feel like, I've listened to some of these podcasts where they're talking to fart fetishists or talking about fart fetish, and they're sharing their own stories. They're like, oh, do you fart around your boyfriend? No. Or one of them says, yes, he farts around me, so I fart around him in retaliation, that's a great paradigm. But I think if your relationship is like, oh yeah, I hear her farting in the bathroom and that's already too much, which is what one of the hosts said on one show I listened to. And I'm like, that's not, like, you may have a good relationship beyond that, but that's when you're with a relationship with someone, if you're really thinking it's serious and going somewhere, I think there's nothing to hide at that point, because you're living with this person, they're sleeping in your bed most likely. Like, you should know everything. I'm not saying stand in the bathroom with them and invade their space, but there should be no embarrassment of that type. If you want to fart and you're in the kitchen cooking, do it. And, and he should be fine with that, and vice versa.
What you said about the podcaster right there, not even being able to hear his girlfriend fart in the bathroom. That's exactly what I mean when I'm talking about the illusion of a womanhood. Like, we put up these women on a really unfair pedestal, where I think the reality of it is much more pleasing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially for people who want, people say, even outside of this fetish, that they want intimacy. Well, that's one aspect of intimacy. It may be a dirty or ugly aspect of intimacy, but it is intimacy. That is knowing someone deep down in a specific way. I'm going to butcher it if I try to go too far into it, but somebody came to me with a blog post that they wanted published on the website. And it talks about how there's a gut bacteria, and an attraction to that gut bacteria is like an attraction to a person's health. Now, I don't know how fully the science works in on that, but to say it's definitely... to know what someone's farts smell like is an intimate act. One of the most intimate ways you could know a person, the inside of their body, inside of their stomach, that, you can't get much deeper than that without, being a surgeon or something.
Totally. And for me, fart fetish has never actually been so much about the smell. Even though I have a huge fetish for asshole smell. Just to talk about the one aspect of the illusion again, some guys are if I'm gonna lick that pussy or asshole, she better be fucking clean. And I'm like, no, I want to taste her. I want her scent on my face, But for me, fart fetish is more about the woman actually doing it, farting, and maybe also the sensation of feeling the fart on me.
Right. No, absolutely. A more physical enjoyment. Would you say what are the aspects of the fart that you actually enjoy? Like smell, sound, what are your favorites, I guess, of that?
There's definitely an aspect of the more nastier or dirtier the sound is, the more counterplay there is between the feminization and the fart, So I definitely say that For example, I've tried in my past, if a girl writes me and farts basically on my testicles, that's a huge turn on. I really love that.
Nice, nice. So kind of the feel of it and the sound are kind of the main aspects you enjoy. I gather.
Definitely, the smell can be kind of a funny aspect because it's like, damn, that smells awful or something like that. But it's not something I don't love the smell of fart.
For sure, for sure. That's actually not typical. The previous interview I had with Victoria, she talked about how she doesn't enjoy the smell, but she does enjoy the sound. I think the sound was the main aspect she enjoyed. So I think sound is probably the most common because I think it's the most, especially in pornography, it's the most readily accessible. Like if the farts are silent, the video, I think for many people starts to lose a little bit of value, even if it's just like airy. And maybe if you see the asshole, like then it's the only way you really know someone farted. Other ways, I think other creators may lie about farting when it's silent. I'm not going to say that for a fact, but it's hard. You just have no idea, especially when they're sitting on someone and then they're thrashing. It's like, oh, I farted, but it's like, did you though? How do you know?
It's not that related, but I was just thinking like that also an aspect of porn, like it's a comfort when a guy comes in the woman's asshole and she's made to like fart it out again. Then all of a sudden we get this aspect of normal anal porn touching our fetish, like the fart fetish, but it is still porn models that would never dream of doing fart fetish, maybe.
For sure, that is an interesting thought. I did not think about that, but it's true. Yeah, you're right. There is a seemingly, like, even though it's the same activity, there's like a different mentality to it. Maybe it's because a cum fart is, even though it's quite dirty, it's cleaner because it's a liquid rather than a shit smell air that is coming out. I that's the only thing I can think of the difference between the two being.
But one thing I really love about seeing cum farts is when it kind of embarrasses the woman because like oftentimes the cum farts they just happen without like any sound. So there are many movies out there when she pushes the cum out and she actually really makes some huge farts and she can't hold her mask. She's like laughing hysterically. That's something I really enjoy because it puts another reality aspect upon the screen.
Absolutely. And you know what? That may be, I mean, I'm not saying let's take up this banner, but that may be the most relatable way our fetish reaches non-fetishists is through anal sex, because I'm not experienced, but from my understanding, anal sex pushes a lot of air into the ass during the activity, whether it be men or female. So, yes, it seems like farting as a result of anal sex is almost like it's not a gateway, but perhaps if you had a fart fetish, it's like we were talking about on previous episodes, perhaps this fart fetish is inborn and then woken up by, something you see, something you watch, an experience you have. That could be, for some people, having anal sex for the first time, the woman farts and they're like, okay, that did so. I'm now hard again. Maybe we should, start again or something. But yeah, I find that very interesting. It's a possibility for making that bridge if ever needed.
Totally. And I was listening to this podcast where a woman was interviewed and she was a cock queen. So she got really turned on by her boyfriend going out and having sex with other women. And she had this one rule. It was no anal. Anal, that's only between you and I because that's our intimate space and it's so taboo still that she didn't want any other women to take part of their little taboo secret play, even though I think anal is pretty common these days. But to me, it kind of said something very fascinating about our psychology when it comes to asses and assholes. It's like it's so dominated by this taboo aspect that, like, we love Jennifer, what's her name, Jennifer Lopez's ass, or something like that, and every guy in the world is like, fuck, her ass is just the greatest. While for me it's like, but why her ass? What's so fascinating about the ass? And when I like search within myself for that answer, it always comes back to the taboo aspect of, like, there's so much unsaid about that ass. It's the dirtiest place on the body. It's where farts and shit come out of. and to me, it's so it's connected to that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. It is odd, always odd to think about the attraction to butts in general, just because they are the product of the waste products of our life. Whereas, people who are into breasts, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe at one time they gave milk, but even that's not unappealing. It's just like, I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, I that's an interesting thing you touched on, because I'll have to think about that more. Because the breasts don't really produce anything. So perhaps people who have fart fetish, scat fetish, what have you, are, I don't know. I'm touching on something, but maybe I'm not. I'm not sure. You talked about two interesting and unique experiences with the tent experience and with the mistress you had for a time. Do you have any other experiences that maybe formed your relationship with this fetish, or just interesting experiences?
I can't really think of any personal experiences other than when the last time I became single, which was for almost 3 years ago. I had had these fetishes. Besides having fart fetish, I'm also a cuckold, and I have been for like 15 years a cuckold. And those fetishes, just especially when I was just single and developing my own sexual interests, they became a huge part of my life, and I kind of came to the conclusion that it's not something I want to not be able to share in the future. So when I began to date again, I told myself just to be honest, upfront about my fetishes. I even had like this cuckold symbol on my Tinder profile, and maybe second or third date, I would tell the women about my fart fetish, which was a deal breaker sometimes. But I'm more glad that I would find the right one and find the one who can accept me for who I am, than just lie about it.
Absolutely. And that's really a good point, too, because I think, I mean, we should be honest first of all, obviously. And that's part of what this show is to encourage. But as we get older, it becomes more and more clear that yes, we still want the validation and the affirmation that we did as a child, which is sometimes for some people comes through their relationships. But as we get older, you start to realize the value of a deep connection, a real connection, rather than this is my girlfriend I have to introduce so you know that I'm a worthy person in life. I think a lot of people have that, like, I need a girlfriend, I need a boyfriend, so people know that I'm worthy or acceptable in society. I think as you get older, we still have those like doubts, those feelings, but you really want to prioritize spending your time with people who fully understand you, fully grasp you, and grasp you in a way that excites you, and vice versa. You should complement each other in your relationships. But I think it's really important. As soon as you, I think it happens naturally as we get older. But if you can, start being honest today in your 20s, it would be better for you, I think. Like, you may experience more embarrassment because people are not quite ready to hear the truth. They're not ready to be serious adults at that time in their life yet. They're like, oh, here to fart fetish, ha ha ha, you with this guy. And you hear about people who I think Jules talked about how he talked about his fart fetish, and then that spread around the whole school in an embarrassing way for him. Now, obviously, and thank God, he's still standing, but in many ways that could go wrong. But I think the point is, I'm kind of like making circular logic here, but the point is, I think being honest earlier, or as early as you can, is important, because those are the people you want to connect with. Those are the people you want to be with for the rest of your life, because life is short. To waste it on anything that's not like for the love of yourself and the joy of life is a waste of time, in my opinion.
Totally. I was just thinking that if there were some people I really didn't trust or didn't want to know about my fart fetish, I would never tell them about it. And, the people that I've told about it, if they tell their inner circles, well, so be it, because I'm not going to hang out with them every day. As for me, the important thing is that my girlfriend knows it, and I can have discussions about it with her. And we have had sex before when I was introducing her to the idea, and she was like, okay, put on some fart porn and let's explore this together. Maybe I'll understand it.
That's great. That's a really great partner. I'm very glad that you have that and can explore that way. Congrats sounds like the right word, but it's very
Thank
good,
you.
very nice to find someone like that. It sounds like from what I gathered of you speaking, it sounds like there's a little bit of a kink scene where you are. Is there, and have you been out in that scene?
Yeah, but it depends on what you mean, like on kink scene. Does that include fart fetish or?
Not really. Not usually.
No.
No. Like, there's a kink scene here, but there's no fart fetish. I mean, I met a fart fetishist once.
Okay, so we're talking about sex clubs and stuff.
Sex clubs, dungeons, people, the usual. See, the only reason I mean, I like the crowd of people there. I feel like people understand. It's the same like you talk about your girlfriend. I feel like the people there can understand me. Some of the barriers are already down, rather than me having to kind of like introduce them to like even the aspect of like I like consensual non-consent in my domination, essentially. So like these are things that are not really discussed in the normal world, but in the kink world, you feel like everybody, even if they're not into it, they're on the same page. Oh, I know what that is,
Totally. And there are clubs for swingers, and there are gay clubs, and there are sex theaters and stuff. I've actually been to all of those I mentioned. The first time I went to a swingers club, is it called that in English, swingers club?
It is. We usually separate the kink and the swingers, but yeah.
Okay. The first time I went to such a club was I was only 20 years old, and so was my then girlfriend, and that's how I became a cuckold, basically. So I've actually had quite a lot experience with those kinds of clubs, but I've never like it's not so connected in my mind to like the typical version of fetishes you might think.
Oh no, definitely. Nah, definitely. The internet, especially if you start on the internet as I have, the internet shows you a much different world of BDSM than what is in the real world, which is probably a good thing, because there's a lot of I mean, I'm sure it's consensual. People are signing documents, but because the dominationer aspect in some of these, it seems like it's not consensual. It seems like there's like a very like mean aspect to it. And then you go out into these clubs, and these are just, normal people having normal lives. Maybe, one girl's got a guy on a leash and she's not really talking to anyone. She's in her, headspace, but mostly it's just people there chatting, maybe smoking on the patio and just hanging out and having a good time. Like I enjoy that aspect just for this, even without the kink. Like I don't generally go to play because my interests are pretty narrow in this fetish, and there's not a lot of people who are down with that. But just going there and socializing has been helpful, and it's been helpful in me saying that I have a fart fetish when I'm with people, and you know, I'm obviously not going to jump in like, "Hi, I'm Raj, I have a fart fetish," but like when it comes up in conversation or other kinds of like, what are you into? I'm not going to hold back in the way that I used to. When I came into the scene in 2017, as for the first time, I was like, I'll tell them I like face sitting and I like femdom, and that didn't help either. Like no one cares. Like it doesn't make it any better. Face sitting isn't any more acceptable, really. Face sitting is seen as something that happens between more intimate partners. And femdom's cool. Like they have a nice community. Generally older women, but yeah, I actually enjoy the scene just for the social aspect more than anything. Like ideally, I would find someone in the scene that would, you know, like, oh, that's interesting, or let's try that. But also, you know, being an introverted person, I'm like, well, what kind of places do I want to go to meet people? And, you know, bars are fine. I'm not a fan. I don't really like know how to walk up to people and be like, hey, can I talk to you as well? But like in the kink scene, it seems a little easier. It seems like people are on the same page. At least a couple of pages are the same.
Yeah, people are meeting at the same level. And sometimes even without their much of their clothes on, right?
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
Yeah, and the clubs we have here are pretty great as well, because it's almost kind of like a bar where if you pay the entry, you get free wine and beer for the whole night. But if you get too drunk, then you're kicked out.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Like most of the clubs here, they won't allow any drinking. They want to make sure you are fully coherent or fully they say you can't consent. If you're drinking, smoking like marijuana or something, their belief is you can't consent. We're starting to wind down, and you actually mentioned other fetishes you have. Are there any other fetishes that need to go with the fart fetish for you? We talked about taboo. Are there other aspects that you feel like need to be a part of it?
Not that I can think of. I can't really. I think fart fetish kind of stands on its own two legs for me.
That makes sense. I think I understand it too. I understand where you're coming from, where it's really more about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really more about farting in general with the image of a hyper feminized woman.
Yeah, and you know, I don't even want to, how do you say, like minimize it to only including hyper feminized women, because I enjoy it from, you know, seeing it from basically most women. But the more beautiful I find her, and that's not always hyper feminized. You know,
Sure.
Some women are definitely beautiful in on their own without the hyper feminization. But the more beautiful I find her, the more hot I find her farts.
Nice. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think that's pretty. I think that is pretty common. At least I don't know if people have put it in those terms, but like in all of us, whether it be inside this fetish or not, we are attracted to people we find attractive. Now, we don't always find the same people attractive, but the point is, like, we all have this subjective opinion of attractive, and we gravitate towards that. It's not, I don't think anyone gravitates toward like, well, I find this person really unappealing and unattractive. Let me watch her porn. Obviously, there is someone who probably does like her and find her very attractive. But if it's not you, you wouldn't obviously gravitate in that direction, regardless of whatever fetish you had.
Totally. And at the same time, I think society and societal norms have something to say, influencing people into like pushing what is attractive these days. Like, for example, growing up, I remember being in the movies watching Lara Croft with Angelina Jolie. And to me, it was like, whoa, super model, hottest woman ever. And today, I find myself like asking, what, damn, what was so fascinating about her? I'd like to sometimes get into that same mindset I had like for 20 years ago.
It's true. It's true. I find myself in in a similar way. I remember, really, I was pretty young. Probably maybe early, maybe mid-teens or something, maybe 20s, I'm not sure. But I remember having like there was this picture of Catherine Zeta-Jones, and it wasn't an ass picture, like she was in a dress, but her ass was sticking out prominently. And I remember, enjoying that picture and enjoying, her aspect. And then as I got older, I'm like, I'd probably like prefer like a Zooey Deschanel or like kind of a nerdy, kind of understated girl in this way, just because I don't know, I feel like they'd like get me more than a Catherine Zeta-Jones, which is probably a little more high maintenance, a little more she's out there in the world, whereas you assume a person like Zooey Deschanel or what, maybe the nerdier girl on Big Bang, you feel like they're a little more understated, like they might have attractive aspects, especially if they were made up differently than on that show Big Bang, but they're not like what every guy is going to go after. Every guy is going to go after Catherine Zeta-Jones, but not everyone's going to like Zooey Deschanel. Maybe, but it's a little more I guess understated is the best word.
But even as a teenager, when I saw Angelina Jolie in Tomb Raider, my mind was like, oh, very beautiful woman. I wonder what her asshole looks like. Imagine even she has farted today. For me, it was always like there was always the dirty side put upon it, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah. No. I mean, it's definitely become more clear too as we've talked over this last hour, which is made it's made it more clear and helped me understand your perspective, and I hopefully think the listeners as well. You mentioned you talked about this fetish with your current girlfriend. Have you talked to other people, or how have you found your talking about this fetish? How have they gone? How have those conversations gone?
I've my two previous exes I've talked to about it and like come clean about it, if you might say that like that. I remember being maybe a little bit frustrated with my ex, like, I know you're farting and I enjoy it. Why can't you just do it in front of me? Because she was very, very self-conscious and not comfortable doing it in front of me, which is also fine. I'm not going to push her into anything. But for me, I've shared it with exes and my current girlfriend and sexual partners, and that's it. I don't have the kind of friends where that would be not looked down upon or not laughed at.
That's true. The only person I know who seems to and that's been on the show that has that kind of relationship with friends that actually are interested is Jules. Like, I've not heard anyone, like, I understand talking about it with your exes and partners of the time, and that makes total sense. Obviously that's the main person that should know, because you are trying to build an intimate relationship with this person. But like I'm a bit envious of Jules having people like and girls, boys, whatever, ask him about it and have like questions like I don't have anybody doing that. That'd be cool. Like I've told some friends, but they're not like interested in it. They're not like asking questions. One of them made like a joke once recently about like it just incorporating into whatever the fuck he was talking about. But it just as a reminder, like he knows, but it wasn't mean spirited, but it wasn't like of any interest to him either. So like, yeah, I feel like that. I don't know if normal people will ever hopefully come to a questioning. But the fact that, talking about it with intimate partners, with people you want to date for some period of time makes total sense. So how did those conversations, were they always positive?
Positive in the sense that I wasn't judged or looked down upon, but they didn't always lead to any further experience in the fetish.
For sure. But at least that is the great thing to hear, and has been my experience as well in telling people, is that they're generally not judgmental, or mean about it. I think, especially you talked about, someone you trust, someone you know. So I think it's not just about telling anyone, but you do want to get a sense of this person, even if you're telling a stranger at a party, you talk to them a few lines, you see how they approach different things, how they talk about other people, how they talk about aspects they enjoy. Are they very arrogant in the way they talk? Are they like, my views are the right views? And you're like, okay, maybe I don't want to tell that person because they might have an opinion on it and a judgmental, and maybe they don't seem like a partner for me anyways. Why do I bother?
Yeah.
But if someone's like, really friendly and really like easygoing, and then the aspect can come up in an organic way, it's like, okay, yeah, I'll tell this person. Because my thought is, at the very least, you send out more agents in the world to help you on your journey. Because, it probably may never happen, but if someone else runs into the opposite sex that you might enjoy, and they're like, hey, I'm really gassy all the time, or maybe some miracle, they're like, I have a fart fetish, and they're like, oh, you know what? I met a guy and he has a fart fetish. Why don't I connect you two? That's my, I guess my idealistic wish for telling people. That may never happen, but I think it definitely can't happen without talking about it at all. Like, you can't find it for yourself, and no one can help you find it if they don't know.
Yeah, totally. And the days when I was still smoking cigarettes, I maybe experienced once or twice, like going outside and smoking with some people from school or something, where one of the girls might fart or something because, yeah, she wasn't prudent. But instead of like being overly acceptable and overly showing my fetish aspect of it, I would like tell her that, I think it's awesome when women just fart. Make them relax into it.
Was that something the women you talked to about that? Was that a positive experience as well?
Yeah, and these are not women that I had any sexual relations with, because that's why I'm saying, like, it wouldn't be appropriate to like mention that I have a fetish for this kind of thing. But I just mentioned, like, that's pretty awesome. I think women should fart more or something like that.
Sure. And that's the thing. Like, I think coming up with clever ways, and I don't mean clever like deceptive, but interesting ways to broach the topic in that way are possible. Because, it may not have happened in that situation, but her response might have been like, oh, what do you like it? And then, obviously you feel out the situation there, but you might say, well, yeah. And then who knows where that goes? And again, I'm talking like idealistic situations. Life is complicated, but at the same time, what I said earlier, life is short. So spending any time hiding yourself is only hurting yourself, is only wasting your own time in this life. Like, even if you believe in reincarnation, like, it's not your life that you're living again. You're not going to know you lived a previous life and have all those experiences and whatever thoughts and all that. You're going to be back again starting from scratch. So this life we have is all we have. And it should be lived to the fullest, not hurting anyone, not doing anything immoral, unethical, but essentially getting the most enjoyment out of life and not putting up a bunch of rules or barriers in what is correct. Like, I have to be married by this age. I have to have kids by this age. I have to, this. It's like, no, you have to enjoy your life and support yourself and support your people, whatever is important to you. But enjoying your life, I think that's something that the more we've become civilized, I think the less we've enjoyed life, oddly enough. Like, we've put on a lot of things and a lot of rules and a lot of like regulations, guidelines the way life is supposed to go. And I think on a human level, like our human being, the part that doesn't need to wear clothes or whatever is being suffocated by, what is civilization in many ways. And I'm not saying like, let's all go out and be naked. Like, we've decided as a society that we should be clothed and that's appropriate. But to not like enjoy your aspects of your life, to have a fetish, I guess more specifically, to have a fetish and not talk about it to people you trust and you think and you believe care about you and have your best interests at heart, I think that's a mistake you can make in this life. And I think it should be rectified as soon as you're comfortable.
Totally. It sure seems like the heathens had a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And the more you put a barrier, or the more you like shut down your sexual emotions, as long as those emotions and actions aren't hurting anybody, then I can't see any harm to it. I can't actually see a harm to close those feelings down. I think what has happened to the Catholic Church in recent years is a huge part of making sexual people not being allowed to act on their normal sexuality, and in that way they have developed some sick sexuality as a result.
For sure. Yeah, we've increased shame when, like, I think as a human race, as an animal species, I don't think that's a thing. Like, animals, I don't think experience shame. That's something we as humans invented.
Yeah. And shame maybe has its place in some evolutionary process of being necessary, but these religious confinements we put on ourselves, which create the sexual norms we live in, are pretty much not useful. They're not good for anything. I would love to have been part of the free sex movement in the 60s, or what it was called, and I actually try kind of to be part of that movement with my fetishes in the swinger club and with my cuckold aspect and stuff, because I really, really have figured out that exploring my sexuality to the fullest is such a big gift for myself that I wouldn't want to be without it.
That's great. It's great. It's a great commentary coming towards the end of our interview, which I'm really glad. I'm really glad you reached out to me. I'm really glad we got to have this discussion. My last question for you is, what are your thoughts on the future of the fetish? And you could talk about it, whether it be for yourself, like what do you want to be doing next? What's your next goal? Or the fetish at large, or both, whichever you have feelings on.
Personally, I would love to just, expand the fart fetish between my girlfriend and I, but worldwide and societal norms when it comes to fart fetish, I'm kind of pessimistic. I can't really see it being much more than it is today, like something that people put a lid on and laugh about when it's brought up, because I think farts are such a embarrassing part of human nature for many people that many people are just not comfortable with it being out in the open, if you know what I mean.
No, I do. I absolutely do. And I think that's it's not uncommon in the current mindset right now, especially among the straight fart fetishists that have commented to me about the show. Nothing negative, but just like I don't think many straight fart fetishes are as ready to come out about it, talk about it, admit it. Whereas, like as I've talked about and talked to members of the gay fart fetish community, and I think because they already live in a world, I don't know worldwide, but in the United States, being gay is still very looked down upon. So I think because they are gay and want to be themselves, they already broach the aspect of being counterculture, I suppose. So adding a fart fetish to it doesn't change much for them. Like, they're already gay, they're already a pariah of society, as it were. Even if it's gaining more acceptance, there is still this, the religious right here, which is very much like wanting to go backwards on gay marriage and any kind of freedom for gays or freedom of expression for gay people. My hope is that will change. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to change for you necessarily or anyone I've talked to, and maybe it's not even going to change in our lifetime, but maybe let me put it this way. I started watching when I started going to the kink community, I'm like, okay, look at this. This is pretty. People are here, they're whipping people, they're spanking people, they're doing things that society says you shouldn't be doing. And this is not really acceptable sexual behavior, as it were. But people are pushing that envelope right now. When I started, I think maybe just after I started this show, I went on my friend Ezra's podcast, and he's doing like psychology and kink in a psychological type setting, where trying to get people to realize radical sexual acceptance, various aspects of their kink and their sexual exploration being okay. And my whole process was, well, if they can be okay, we can be okay too. Like, I get that we're basically straddling the line of scat with fart fetish, but I don't know. Maybe not in America, but I do feel like somewhere in this world there can be an acceptability for farting, for scat. I mean, scat, I think, is illegal as far as a porn aspect, at least in this country. But like, I find it amazing that porn sites have farting categories, and I don't think they would have maybe 20 years ago, maybe more. But I think we've already made some inroads towards it's maybe some acceptance. Maybe we're only accepted in the kink community, maybe it's not the general public, where there might be like, okay, yeah, I'm not in kink, but I like spanking. So, people might explore and taste other aspects of what I call vanilla kink, actually. But as far as these more, I don't know, the only word that's coming to me now is dirty, but like, as far as these more like taboo fetishes come about, I feel like there may be more acceptance if there is people willing to discuss and talk about it and have these discussions, which I think is why this show is important. That's my hope. I don't know. Maybe we'll just tread water, but at the very least, I will say that I'd be glad to be treading water with people in my community than alone, because I think there's nothing worse than that is feeling alone in this fetish.
Totally, good point. And what a good point also you made about the fart fetish being a category today versus like maybe some years ago, right? But I don't know if it's just my ego point of view that I don't know if we're or definitely my aspect of the fart fetish kind of feeds off the fart fetish being stigmatized and taboo, I think it's exciting because it's so not normal.
Interesting. So you're preventing us from moving forward, Naomi. Stop it. No.
Sorry.
No, not at all. It makes total sense. It makes total sense. I do feel like that could still exist if it were more Maybe not. Actually, maybe not. I'll have to think about that as well. That is an interesting thought experiment. And anyone listening, please let me know your thoughts on that. If fart fetish became more acceptable, if women were just like, you see a woman and they're farting in class, or they're in line at Starbucks and they're farting in line, like, would that make the taboo element less enjoyable because the stigma goes away? Anyone, please let me know, Twitter, wherever you contact me. But I think that'd be an interesting question to pitch to everyone. Naomi, I cannot thank you enough for being here. Did you wanna end on anything or say anything else before we conclude?
I just want to thank you for letting me on your podcast. It has been such a great experience. I love talking about this stuff.
That's great. That's awesome. That's what I love to hear, and I'm sure everybody's gonna get a lot from this episode. I guess that's it. We're going to close out. But once again, thank you very much for being here, Naomi, and we'll see you all next time.